Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live panel today with a few of the members on our Eczema Conquerors team. And I'm excited because this is the first time that we've done a live event with them. And it looks like we already have some people on. I'm excited because this is the first time that you'll get to meet them as well. Many of you don't always get to see them behind the scenes, but they do so much, and they've all personally gone through eczema and topical steroid withdrawal as well. And so I want to introduce them to you. I have Stephanie, Timothy, and Katie here. They've all gone through their own journeys, their own struggles. And if you're watching, let me know if you can relate as well. Feel free to ask any questions or type anything in the chat box. And we love to hear your experiences as well. But welcome. I am so happy that you're here. And I'd love to start off with each of you just sharing more about your title here, and also a little bit about your story of what you went through, and yeah, how difficult it was for you to go through it. So, Katie, I'll let you start and share more about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie. I am a eczema advisor on the team, and I've actually been with Eczema Conquerors for a little over 2 years now, which is wild. I went through the program in 2022. And just a little bit about my kind of background with eczema. I had it lifelong, ever since I was born, and it kind of ebbed and flowed throughout my life, and then really started to, I think, peak around kind of high school and into college. And I tried all sorts of things, probably similar to most of you watching and out there listening. It was quite a battle, and ended up taking Dupixent right when it kind of got released to the market. So I was on that for about 5 years. And when I decided to come off of it, it was, pretty treacherous and really difficult. And so I was seeking help, and I'd worked with a lot of different dermatologists and even tried some natural routes myself. But I found the podcast, and that's how I got started with this program, and had such a positive experience. So I just love chatting with people on calls and getting to know our clients, because we've all kind of been there, and I know that Steph and Timothy will share more as well. But I think that's super powerful, and I had such a amazing journey healing. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll kick it off to either Timothy or Steph.
Thank you. And we have JC, who says, thank you for sharing your stories. And it's always so nice to hear what you've been through, so that others know that you're not alone as well. So Stephanie, I'll let you share.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steph. I am the client care specialist on our team. And I would say, so I've been with EC now for about a little over 3 years. I've had a long history of eczema, started since I was 2 years old. I was on topical steroids for about 25 years consistently. If I remember correctly, it was the clobetasol, so a really high dose steroid for a very long time. And in parts of my journey, there were times where I also was on oral steroids as well. And I would say after using that, I was off of it after my son was born in 2019, and it was I went through the whole TSW. So that was quite a journey of its own. Don't recommend it, but it was a very humbling journey as well. So a long history of with that. And as we start to work on things, seen a lot of great healing, still working on things now. But it's going to be a journey for a bit. But again, it's nowhere close to what it used to be when I first started. And I'm very, very thankful for the team. So just a little bit about my journey so far.
Thank you, Steph. And we're grateful to have you on the team as well. And you help offer care for so many of our clients, just to make sure that they're doing well and to make sure that they're taken care of. So we really appreciate that too. And Timothy, we'd love to hear your story as well.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Timothy, and I work as the client success coach for Eczema Conquerors. I talk a lot with our clients and kind of hear them, hear about where they're at, and help guide them and encourage them as we're working with them throughout this whole journey. And I had originally been a client of Eczema Conquerors, and I had eczema basically all over my body. And I, like Stephanie just mentioned, I was on clobetasol as well for about 10 years. And then an immunosuppressant called Protopic for another 3. And things just stopped working for me. And I tried to figure things out on my own. And I was in a very stuck place. And my mom had reached out to Abby and her team. This was back around university age. And I got connected and I started working with them. And then afterwards, I felt very passionate about just eczema and others who are suffering. And I wanted to help out. So I reached out and asked if I could be a part of Abby's team. And that's how I started working. So yeah, a little bit about myself.
And we're so grateful to have you on the team, Timothy. And you've gone through so much, and each of you have as well. And yeah, we might even share some of their before and after photos later too, if there's time. But yeah, they've gone through so much. And even while we're talking later, if any of you want to share your story, feel free to. But I want to talk about the hard emotional challenges that we all go through, because it's so common that many of us, such a common thing that many of us experience. And sometimes even our spouses or partners or our family members may not always understand it. And I'm sure many of you who are listening may have encountered something similar. So I want to ask each of you, what's been the hardest emotional challenge when it comes to relationships and also having eczema and topical steroid withdrawal as well? And for anyone who's listening, feel free to type it in the chat too, because we're all in this as a community and we'd love to hear your experiences too.
I'm happy to share a little bit about this. Just from my personal experience, I had a different career when I was kind of at the peak of my eczema. And it was very social. And it was I was actually a group fitness instructor in front of large classes, like 30 to 40 people. And a lot of times I would have to present or demonstrate movements and physically touch people to kind of get them into the right position. And my eczema was mainly on my hands. And so I think the hardest part for me was being confident in front of large groups. And I was wearing gloves a lot of the time. And so for me, just sort of that like social aspect was really hard. And I oftentimes would like have to get a substitute coach to come in and kind of do the job for me because I was feeling really down and really emotional and kind of withdrawn. So I didn't necessarily want to, be in front of a group of people. So I think and that's a little bit more of a social setting rather than a specific relationship. But I do think it kind of ties into this question. So that was really a difficult time for sure.
Thanks for sharing. And that's often something we hear about, where especially if you have to work in front of a lot of people or you see clients or even other people, it's always hard whenever we come face to face with them. And I know for myself, I was so self-conscious just seeing clients in my corporate job back then. And just like when my face was like very red and I tried to cover it with foundation and I couldn't hide the texture. It was embarrassing. And I'm sure many of you who are listening can relate and may have the same experience as well. But I'll let Timothy or Stephanie share more about what challenges they came across too.
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. I would say the biggest challenges for me, I find it very hard to ask for help, and I don't like other people seeing me suffer or not being at the top of my game. And at my hardest point, when things were kind of the worst for me, and I felt like the flares were just affecting so many parts of my life, I just felt like my life was kind of on pause, and that felt very frustrating. And I felt like I couldn't really do things that I used to be able to do. I was more of a social person, and I really liked saying yes to things and going to different activities and events. And I felt myself withdrawing and saying no, just based off of how I felt or how I looked. And I worked with my hands a lot. I was like a property manager, and I worked with condos as well as kind of like corporate buildings. And I wasn't able to do that anymore because working with my hands was quite painful. And I had to leave my job. And there was a moment of time where I wasn't working, and I just felt like my life was really on pause. And that was really challenging for me. And feeling like a burden is another really big one. So it can definitely relate to Katie in that. And I know Stephanie's going to have some really great things to share as well. But I feel like a lot of us feel like a burden, or we don't like to kind of lean on others when we're in that tough spot. And that was definitely difficult for me too.
That's one of the biggest things that I struggled with too, was feeling like a burden to others, and growing up always feeling like I was just a weight to other people, especially if I had to like talk to them or vent to them too. And it was something that not a lot of my friends would understand, and sometimes they would withdraw because I was leaning on them so much. And so I get how that feels. And so I started growing up where I didn't really ask for help anymore, just because I didn't want to turn people away. And so it is a really real thing. We have one person who says that they are not feeling supported due to a lack of understanding of the constant battle that I am suffering with not being comfortable in my skin. And that's so real. And I just want to acknowledge how you're feeling, that it's hard to feel like others can understand what you're going through. And one of the biggest things I remember experiencing was feeling misunderstood for most of my life. And so what you're feeling is completely relatable, and you're not alone. And I'll pass it on to Stephanie to add on hers.
Yeah, so again, very similar to, I'm sure a lot of you, similar to also, Katie and Timothy, had a very, very busy life prior to going through TSW. So even though I was going through the eczema flares and, I was using the steroid creams, I did notice that it was progressively getting worse. But prior to going through TSW, I was going through like the fast life, constantly traveling, just spending time with family and friends. And we have a big family. So family outings was like something that was consistent and constant, almost at least a few times a month, maybe even more. So it was very excessive. And when I had to go through TSW, which was actually shortly after my son was born, it was a very emotional journey, because I had to kind of just learn to also say no, which was something very uncommon for me, because I was always, always the person that would be down to do anything. So for me to have to almost set boundaries was very foreign. And to also, again, having to have, again, even with like my partner, where we would always tag team and we would do things together, kind of having to have him kind of almost like pick up the slack, because I wasn't able to do so much at the time, where I was pretty much bedridden for like months at a time when I was going through TSW, was also a very emotional journey for the both of us. For me personally, because like I shared, I used to do things, I could like almost do everything, but like not being able to do like your everyday things, like even like wash clothes or wash the dishes or even just hold your child without being in pain. It was a lot to take in all at once. And again, going from such a drastic change where traveling and you're working consistently and you're spending time and going to all these outings, and then to having to fully stop, it was very life altering. So for me, it was emotional in a sense where being disconnected with not only my partner, but also feeling also disconnected with even my family. It was a lot of things. So that was kind of how it was in terms of just like my overall journey, when I would say the majority of it was more through TSW, not so much the eczema portion, just because I felt like it was under control when I was on the steroid creams. It was really out of control though, like afterwards. So that was when things did take a really big shift, just in like my overall life, in like mental aspect and emotional aspect and physical aspect as well.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so crazy how real it can feel, especially when the condition affects us so much, and it affects our family, and it affects the people around us. But I remember also isolating myself a lot too, and not wanting to go out and, be seen, and wanting to hide from the world. We have JC who says, same. I feel like a burden and not meaningfully contributing to my family and friends. And so, yeah, it's just such a real feeling that so many of us go through. Now, in today's panel, we're going to talk about how this condition affected not only us as people, but how it affected our friendships, our dating relationships, our romantic relationships, and our family. So I'm going to move and segue into friendships. And I want to hear more about whether you've lost friendships while going through this or felt isolated, or if your friends were actually really supportive and you felt like you had a good support network. Because I'm sure many of us who are going through this can relate and have similar challenges. So I'd love to hear from each of you about how your friendships were impacted.
We stay in the same order here.
Yeah.
I think one thing that came to mind, Abby, when you asked this question is I had to be vulnerable at a certain point. So I did feel like a lot of friendships were affected, right? Like I definitely, I think JC nailed it, where it's like I just couldn't contribute. And so I was like, man, I really there was like that side of me that felt like, no, I just need to get my skin better. I need to focus on this. But then there was another part of me that was very much feeling kind of guilt, where I felt like I wasn't putting forth the effort into my friendships. And so one thing that I came to realize was that, and I try to see the positive light in most situations, but this was tough, where I finally had to be vulnerable and let my guard down and explain why I wasn't contributing, right, to these relationships. And that really helped. And there were some folks that I think in my life really came forward and like were trying to be as helpful as possible. Hey, how can I help? Like, what can I do for you? Do you just want to spend some time together? Should we go on a walk outside? Things like that really were just so meaningful. And I did actually, there were things that I really hung on to and thanked them kind of towards the healing part of my journey, where I started to see change. And I just said, hey, like, I'm here now. I appreciate you. Thanks for being patient. And thank you so much for like all of the help and support. It means the world, right? So that was a part of my journey that it took a little bit of time, but I thought, wow, like just kind of being vulnerable and being able to express that I do need help did seem to help this quite a bit.
Well, one thing you said about saying that you need help is definitely something that is tough for many of us to do. At least it was hard for me too. And I know Timothy mentioned it was hard for him too as well. And it's still a really big thing that I find difficult to do. But the fact that you're able to be vulnerable and honest with your friends about that too, I think really says a lot about them and your friends as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well said, Katie. And I think I struggled a lot with like vocalizing when I was going through a tough time. And then I think there's another feeling where you feel maybe misunderstood, or like someone doesn't understand the situation. And finding the balance between being comfortable enough to share what you're going through and share that you are needing help, and then feeling misunderstood. That was difficult for me. I remember the hardest part for me just being, I guess, at the age I was doing a lot with my friends, booking a cabin and going on a trip, going to the beach or going camping. And I really loved those like weekend experiences. And the hardest part for me was itch attacks at night. So I would itch myself to bits at night. And that gave me a lot of anxiety with sleeping. And my relationship with sleep was stress inducing. So doing anything overnight, I was starting to say no to. So yeah, those kinds of activities I was turning down, and I didn't know how to explain why, because I felt embarrassed, or I just didn't want to share that I was having a tough time. And that led to confusion from my friends and family too. And also my fiance, who's my girlfriend at the time. Sometimes I would stay over at her parents' place, and sometimes I would feel like not comfortable just because I didn't want to itch myself and then the next morning be in a painful state around other people. I just felt comfortable in my own house, sleeping in my own room and going through some tormented nights and just doing all of that on my own. So in that way, I would say it affected my friendships and relationships. But once I started to explain, and it was maybe a year later that I actually showed some pictures, because I would often cover up with long sleeves, that I was able to help my friends understand, and they didn't judge. And I'm very fortunate that they didn't. I know not everybody has the same experience, but I think being vulnerable and sharing a little bit about what I was going through really helped me feel comfortable asking for help, and to not feel bad saying no to certain things. Yeah, I guess I'll pass it on to Stephanie now.
Yeah, very similar. I feel like we all have kind of very similar stories. So for me, I think it was actually probably during the TSW was when I wouldn't say I would have lost friendships, but I felt like the friendship was, again, kind of similar to what Timothy shared, like kind of disconnected, to the point where, well, with close friends, actually, only a handful of really close friends saw me at my worst. And this is probably when I was going through, like, pretty much like my face was falling off. Like, that's how bad it was. It was, like, I couldn't even recognize myself. Like, my face was so swollen. My hands were swollen, and it was literally like I looked white. Like, it was just like flaking, and it just is almost like out of a horror movie. So for me to have, only a certain amount of really close friends to see me like that, it was also really a shock for them. And I felt like actually similar to, again, what Katie and Timothy shared, being able to see how severe I was and how vulnerable I was as well. They really wanted to understand what I was going through, and me kind of just deep diving into what I've been doing and, why I was going through these things. I feel like it actually strengthened our friendship in a lot of ways too, because it helped them understand all these years, the things that I was going through and leading up to this specific time in my life, why I was going through that. It just really built up that foundation as just as friends. But for some, some people, like, I just wasn't feeling comfortable with sharing. So like at that time, I was also saying no to a lot of outings, to a lot of events as well. So they didn't understand, and we would have to actually make up like a lot of excuses. Like, I would actually have to have like my partner, like my husband, kind of just say like, I was busy with the kids, or I wasn't feeling well, which is like our always go-to kind of excuse, because I just didn't want to have to explain over and over again. And sometimes when we did explain to people, I feel like they're just like, why doesn't she just put some cream on, or why doesn't she just go to see a doctor, or the usual stuff. So I think in some ways there were with certain friends, like we were kind of treading thin water with, and we just didn't want to have to explain it and to have them say certain things where I would have to try to kind of explain my rationale as to why I had to do these things. But with certain friends, again, like friends that I know I was always been close to, like they've seen me at my worst, and I always felt super supported from them. So there was a bit of both. But it definitely shows with those friendships, like the people that really will stick around for when people are going through really thick things like this. So I feel like it did strengthen, and it really did build up that foundation for most of our friendships. So some were lost, but some are, still there.
Thank you for sharing that. And if I may, Stephanie, may I share your before and after photo?
Yeah, of course.
And I know
well, it might be quite.
Yeah.
We might need to have a disclaimer or disclosure here. It's really graphic.
If any of you aren't comfortable with seeing certain before and after photos, or if it's triggering, you can just turn away for this part, but I'll just show it quickly. It's quite a small photo, so you might not even see it that clear. Oh, sorry, see it that clearly, but you can see here what Stephanie went through with her arms before, and it got so much better. This was even just a few years ago, and so we're so proud of you, Steph. We're so proud of your progress and your journey as well, and everything that you've gone through. And I also have Timothy's photos. And Katie, if you want me to share yours, let me know, because I can also do that as well. But yeah, I have someone who said, JC, who said, I think family and friends are well-meaning, but they tend to simplify what eczema sufferers go through. Many of them will say and think, can you just see a doctor or put some cream on it? And so, yeah, we get it. We get it, JC. It's tough. Many of us have gone through something similar, and so we get it when someone says to us about whether we can just put on cream or see a doctor. And unfortunately, it's not that simple. We wish it was that simple for many of us, because it would make our lives a lot easier. Now, I want to talk about this part when it comes to family, because we all have different experiences with our family. And it sounds like for your friendships, like some of them were supportive, and and at times, I know for myself, I would just hide from people as well. So let's talk about family. How did things change when it came to your family? Were they still supportive, or did you often still feel like you had to hide, or did you feel misunderstood or dismissed by them? Yeah, I'd love to chat more. And we can start with Katie again.
I think that the biggest thing here for me is, Abby, you just mentioned it, but kind of hiding. I actually didn't tell most of my family about my skin issues. I think the one person I talked to was my mom. She understood my journey kind of from the beginning, and really saw kind of my skin progress and regress just as time went on. So my mom was always there for me. But I definitely didn't really tell any of my family members about my condition or kind of the route I was going until I actually started to see healing. So I think there was definitely this like really big shadow that was cast, and part of me, looks back and I'm like, should I have opened up a little bit more in order to gain more support? And yeah, and JC just said the self-isolating, and that's kind of where I was at. So yeah, it's kind of a short story for me. But my mom was very much kind of well, you should just go to the doctor, like maybe you should see another doctor or another dermatologist. And we both kind of knew that wasn't really working. So I think when I told her about this program and that I was going to join, she was like, there was a lot of explaining I had to do. She didn't really understand kind of going the natural route or how the internal was connected with the external. So, yeah, but I do think like there are so many different ways this could go. I was just really, I really decided to not explain much to my family at the time.
And that's really understandable. I was like that too. Like I wouldn't want my family members to see me at my worst because, you know, Asian families, they're so blunt and they comment a lot. So I remember when I flew back home and I saw family for the first time in years, I just remember them commenting and they're like, wow, your skin is so dry. As if it wasn't obvious enough, but they just had to point it out. And of course, you always feel bad when they point out something so obvious that you know already. But it feels like when you leave a doctor's office and they point out something that's like already so bad, you just leave feeling terrible. So I just remember my face feeling so dry and flaky, and they kept commenting like, "Wow, it's so dry. Like, are you putting anything on it?" So that was just brings back the memories. But yeah, we have Seabass who says, hey, Abby, I want to thank you and your team for everything. We're on month 5 of being with you guys and great improvements treating the root causes. So we're so happy to hear that, Seabass, and that's so nice. It's always such an honor and such a privilege to walk alongside you guys and all our clients and see them feel better. And yeah, we hear testimonials on a weekly basis, and one of my goals is to start sharing it more too with all of you. And of course, none of this would have been possible without the Eczema Conquerors team that you see here too, with Katie, Stephanie, and Timothy. And if any of you want to book a complimentary breakthrough call, you're welcome to. I'll put the link in the description, and you'll actually get to talk to one of them here, either Katie, Timothy, or Stephanie, and they all share their experiences and what they've gone through. And it's just such a nice feeling to be able to talk to someone and know that they understand because they've been through it before. And yeah, it's a tough thing to go through, but just know that we're here for you and that we understand what you're going through. JC also added and says that his family members will say, wow, what is wrong with you? That is definitely something that's very tough to hear. So I'm sorry that they said that. We have Tamira who says, the majority of family members did not know about my skin problems. Only my mom knew about my struggles, even though it was hard to express to her in my adult age and eczema journey. For sure, we completely understand that as well. And I'll let Stephanie share more too about your experiences.
It was a bit of everything. So for me, I would say a lot of hiding for sure, similar to Katie, a lot of hiding. Again, this was during the TSW portion of my journey. And that was actually during COVID. So it kind of worked out the time, I guess, where I didn't kind of have to always tell my mom or my sisters, like I can't make it. But there were times, of course, like they're like, why can't you just come outside? And I remember like even in the winter months, it would literally burn whenever like the wind would just blow my face. But I remember, so a lot of hiding. And I would say the only person that really saw me at my worst was probably my mom and of course my husband, who was living with me at the time. But my mom, because she was also helping out with my son too when I was going through the thick of it. So it was because we've had a long history of eczema too in the family. Like my mom also has eczema. She always felt like, this was something that I just had to go through in life, where the topical. So like having these discussions with her, it was hard at the beginning. But I would say like as the TSW was kind of simmering down, it was good. But when I got pregnant again with my daughter in 2021, that's when I was undergoing the staph infection. So that was the photos that Abby had shown previously. And I would say that was actually one of the most traumatic times of my life, where I had to actually move out, move out of the house and bring my newborn daughter with me to live with my mom because I needed full-time care. Like I actually didn't have a choice. And I think when my mom saw me at that point, it really, it actually broke us down to the point where she just wanted me to feel better. So whatever I wanted to do, she was on board with. And I think also my sisters, who were at the time where I was living at my sister's, and my mom lives with my sister, so we were living together for like a month at the time. And I was separated from my son and my husband because I had to live with my mom so she could take care of me full time. That was also like, it really, I think for me, my sister finally understood that this is what I needed to do for me. Like to really, it wasn't going to be an easy fix where could just slap on some steroids or take medication. Like this was something real. So I think at first, a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of hiding, but until I was forced and until I was going through that really traumatic time in my life when I was going through those like staph infections, that's when I feel like they finally understood what I needed. Whether it was like more emotional or mental support, whether it's, actually trying to help me figure this out in a more natural way or trying to figure out the root causes rather than, again, suppressing the symptoms. I think they were really finally understanding. So it kind of went through different stages. But ultimately, it's never just like a one line, like upward trajectory or everything is like everyone's going to be very understanding. I feel like everyone's, depending on what stage you're at, I think that's when they become more like willing to understand your situation more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And as you shared that, I don't know if any of you, Katie or Timothy, felt it, but I just felt the emotions come back up of, how traumatic it is. And, I've shared before behind the scenes that I feel like all of us here share like a trauma bond because we've all gone through something so traumatic that only we understand. And of course, our family and our partners were there with us, but sometimes it was also hard for them to fully understand as well. So I completely, I understand how it feels. And thank you for sharing your story as well. Each of you have gone through something so difficult, and it also caused a lot of trauma too. But Timothy, did I skip over your turn?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's okay.
I'll,
What
I'll let
Steph
you share.
Katie posted was really
And I'll
good.
share your photos as well on the screen at the same time. So I'll let you go ahead, and I have your before and after photos.
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's just really nice listening and really emotional and impactful listening to both Katie and Stephanie's stories because they're both so unique, but there's also a lot that I can relate to. With Katie just mentioning that, she didn't want to share until after she got to a better place. I really felt that too. And I felt like I couldn't really talk about what I was going through until after I'd been through it. And then I just kept going through it. And then I got to a point where I just couldn't keep it to myself anymore. And I had to share. And my family was very supportive. Like Stephanie was sharing, there's a history of eczema in my family. I come from a family of 7, and my brothers and my sister all went through a similar thing with eczema, so we could all relate in that sense. And I really felt more judgment, I would say, from friends and maybe people I didn't know so well. And like you were sharing, Abby, like your family commenting on your dry skin. I remember anytime someone would look at my hands, and my hands were the worst part, my hands and my arms, they would just exclaim, "Wow, your hands are so red." And I'm like, I know, like that's not a surprise to me. You don't have to point that out. Like I'm well aware. And that was always frustrating and discouraging. But my family was very supportive, and definitely my mom, just like how beautifully your mom cared for you, Stephanie. My mom really advocated for me and really, really wanted to be there for me. And it took a lot for me to let her buy things. She would buy me sleeves or gloves to help cover my hands and my arms when I slept, or she was always buying a new moisturizer or trying something new, a new supplement. And it didn't always work, but the intention was there. And looking back, I really see how she was there for me and really wanted to be there for me. And I had a hard time letting her. But yeah, that's mainly my experience with my family. And I also had some pretty bad staph infections that I didn't even know were staph. Lots of crusting, lots of oozing on the skin. And I didn't realize what it was until I started working with Eczema Conquerors and Abby and the rest of the team. I thought I was just going through TSW, which to an extent I was, but there was also this reoccurring staph infection on my hands and my arms. And they really helped me get to the bottom of it and really uncover kind of what was going on. So that really helped. And yeah, my mom was really there for me. So I know it's not the same for everybody, but any of you guys who can relate to that, definitely don't forget to be open and vulnerable with your family members who want to be there for you, because it really does help you. And looking back, I know they would feel bad not being able to be there for you when you do share after you've been through it, how bad it was. And yeah, it's not easy, but it's definitely worthwhile if your family's there and they want to be there for you. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that, Timothy. And we have a few comments as well from our viewers. One who said, "Congrats, Steph, on your progress. My hands look similar to yours." We have another who said that my family would always recommend the steroid creams their doctors gave them, and I found it so hard to repeatedly explain that I've used this before and I don't want to continue using them. I have a very supportive family, but it is hard when they feel sorry for you and they're always worrying. For sure. And I know for myself, my family also, they tried to be there the best that they could, but the main way that they knew how was to take me to doctor after doctor who kept giving me medications. And I know that was their way of helping me and supporting me, but it was also hard when a lot of people around me were so worried about what I was going through, and they were scared as well because I was scared. We didn't know if I was going to heal and get better, and we didn't know what the future looked like because it looked very hopeless at that time. And I know everyone who is here goes through a lot. Now, I want to move on to the last portion of our talk, which is the part about how eczema and topical steroid withdrawal affects our dating relationships, romantic relationships, whether we're dating or married or thinking about dating in the future. I know that for each of you, when you're at different stages of your life, the eczema and the TSW really affected you guys. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about how you felt and how the condition affected your romantic relationships. If you ever felt insecure or avoided intimacy, or how did you and your partner navigate it?
I'll share that. So I've been with my husband now for about like 14 years. And so he's kind of seen it all. And I can't even imagine kind of going through like the dating scene and navigating this. I think, that would be, I would probably shy away. But thankfully, being in a relationship where someone's kind of seen you at your best and your worst, I think there was a lot of just a lot of emotions that needed to be shared. And so ultimately there were very long stretches where I avoided intimacy because I was so insecure about my skin. And I just, you didn't even want to be touched or even looked at for that matter. So I do think there were really long periods of time where it was really difficult. And so much so that like we had to seek additional help and go through just kind of speaking with another person about this and getting advice and figure out how to navigate it. Because there were only like certain words that I could express that would they would try to help, but wouldn't necessarily kind of get us to that point. So yeah, I had to definitely seek external resources on this one. And as things, I think, ebbed and flowed with my skin, there were times where I'd kind of try to let my guard down, but it can be really hard. So yeah, I guess in sort of this explanation and answering this question, I would say, like, don't be afraid to talk to someone, because it really can help the relationship out. And that, I think this was probably one of the hardest things for me, especially because you can just feel like so bad about how you look or how it feels, especially, as you get into bed at night, and that's when the itching starts. So it was just like one of the hardest things. I mean, there were times where I'd just stick myself on the couch and just like remove that, because I couldn't even like lay in the bed and just like think about being, touched in that way. So yeah, it's a little bit about, I think, my story with this.
Thanks for sharing, Katie. And did you want me to share your before and after photos?
Sure.
Okay.
We've all shared, so
I'll let you all have a glimpse of what Katie went through as well. And these are just some of Katie's hands before. You can see that there are a lot of bumps. And I know you were on Dupixent for a few years as well. And your skin is doing so well now. And I'm just so happy to hear that. And these were your legs as well. And yeah, you've gone through a lot and overcame a lot. And so for anyone who is listening, just remember that there is hope and that you can heal and you can get better. And our team, Katie, Timothy, and Stephanie, who you see here, they've all healed their skin significantly. So I just want to give you that hope and let you know that it's possible. And don't forget that if any of you want to book a complimentary breakthrough call just to learn more about how we work with our clients and how we can help support you, you can always talk to one of them. I put the link in the description, or you can head to my website, eczemaconquerors.com, and just click on the breakthrough call link at the top. But each of them have been through it before and they know what it's like. So I just want to let you know that you're not alone and that we're all here with you through this. And yeah, thanks for sharing, Katie. And it impacts us so much on a personal level, and it's so deep. And so I appreciate you for sharing your story, and I'm glad you're able to navigate it and that your skin has healed so much right now too. And Timothy, I'll let you share more.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for being so vulnerable and how you were sharing, Katie. I remember I didn't really tell my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, until about a year in. I was kind of mentioning before, I wanted to wait till after I healed to really show people, or maybe even talk about what I was going through. And I just wasn't healing on my own. So it got to a point where I just had to share. And for me, my skin just exploded and got really, really bad. Because initially it was just on my hands. And when it got bad, it spread from my hands, up my arms, neck, around my eyes, and torso, legs. And that happened just as I entered into dating my my girlfriend at the time, who's now fiance, who's also watching. So, hey, Rachel. And I was like, come on, this is the worst timing. And it really did hit my confidence. And I really hid, wearing long sleeves, and I didn't feel comfortable just showing my skin. And one thing I remember was holding hands. I didn't like the attention on my hands because that was the worst part. So when Rachel would hold my hand, she liked to hold my hand kind of close to her. And I felt very vulnerable, and like there was a lot of attention to my hand. So sometimes I didn't feel so comfortable. And because I wasn't being honest and kind of like sharing how I was feeling or why I didn't feel comfortable, that did lead to confusion on her end. Like, why don't you like holding my hands? And we had a talk maybe a couple months into our relationship where we really shared And she was asking me about my journey, and I was showing her pictures and really being honest with her. And that really helped when we had that conversation, because then she told me she didn't care. And I remember she held my hand and she kissed my hand and kind of let me know that that didn't affect anything. And that was a really crucial moment, I think, in our relationship. And bonding over going through difficult things, I think it really helps draw you closer together. And it did for us. So just me being vocal about what I was going through and really just getting into it and being raw and vulnerable with her, that was really important for us. Because if I wasn't, it led to kind of confusion and pain on both of our sides and a lack of understanding. And now I feel we both feel very close, and like we can kind of share and lean on each other when we're going through difficult times. And that really helped. I still feel a little embarrassed, but whenever she lets me know that she doesn't care, that always helps.
Yeah, appreciate you for sharing that, Timothy, and just being so vulnerable too. And actually, that's how I felt as well. Whenever my husband, at that time when we were dating, when he would hold my hand or anything, I would just feel so embarrassed. But I'm glad you're able to navigate that, and it brought you closer. How did you manage to hide it for a year before you guys talked about it?
Oh, it wasn't like hiding it, like she had no idea, but I hid how much it was affecting me and maybe how much it was covering my skin. So I would always wear hoodies and long sleeves, even in the summer. I would wear like a long sleeve button up and always keep the sleeves down. And I did my best to hide my skin. And I still feel that. Like I still feel the, I guess, PTSD from that, or like those inclinations to kind of cover up sometimes. But I think it was mostly through that and just vocally talking about like the emotional, stressful side of it. I didn't really talk about that. I was always like, oh, it's fine. Don't worry about me. Or maybe it's a middle child thing, or maybe it's something that we all go through and we just don't feel like we can share, about what we're going through, or we feel like a burden. So I definitely felt that. But yeah, long sleeves and hoodies were my friend during that time where I wanted to hide.
For sure. And I know even for myself, when I would wear clothes, it would irritate my skin so much. So I would also have to hide. And a lot of my clothes got damaged as well from just being so oily. We have Gary, who said that intimacy is difficult to navigate due to confidence when you're flaring. Also, sweating while on the job can make you flare. Not ideal at all, if you catch my drift. For sure. We get that as well. And JC said, I decided early on, like 14 years old, that I would never marry or have biological children because I did not want to pass on the eczema gene. I'm 50 years old now and have never been on a date. Thank you for sharing that, JC, and for being so vulnerable as well. I know that when we have eczema or TSW, it can lead us to change our life choices and change how we navigate things and feel about ourselves too. So I know that it's not easy, and thank you for sharing more too. I know that for myself, when I started dating my husband, when we first started dating, my skin was good, and right after we started dating, somehow my skin just went poof and just exploded, and my legs looked burnt, and like my face and my body started like slowly becoming like 95% covered in rashes. And I remember he asked me if he could see what my legs looked like, and I was so scared to show him, even though he wasn't judgmental at all. But to me, like, I looked like a burn victim, and I was so embarrassed to let him see that. And so thankfully I started opening up and being able to share with him. But I remember times during motherhood when, my son would be crying, but I'd also be crying because I would be having a breakdown on how my skin flared so much. So those were just a few of the hard moments that we went through. But Stephanie, I'll let you take it away too.
Yeah, I actually want to just tie it back to what JC has shared. I would say, like, I don't know about Timothy or Katie, but like, I remember as a child, I used to be bullied a lot because of my eczema. So I could see how that could also affect someone's self-confidence growing up. It really did impact me in a lot of ways growing up as well, which is probably why I was so heavy on the steroid creams. Think about it in hindsight, just for wanting that, normal life that everyone kind of expects. So it's I can see how that could really affect somebody dealing with this at a very young age too. But yeah, to kind of share about, I don't know if my husband is listening, but Alex and I have been together for kind of similar to Katie, so for 15 years now. So we grew up pretty much together in our teens up until our 30s now. So it was a very drastic thing to go through. Again, when I would say, with obviously I was on the steroid creams for the majority of our relationship, so he never really saw a really bad flare. But when I went through the TSW after my son was born, I would say there was no intimacy. So there was absolutely just no intimacy. I lost a lot of self-confidence. And mind you, my husband's really supportive, and he's always been very loving and caring. So he, would always say, like how beautiful I am, and, this doesn't matter to him. And, but for me, like, I felt like I lost a huge part of myself and my kind of also like my identity in a way, because I felt like for me, I was always a very intimate person in general. But for me to see the drastic changes in not only just my appearance, but like how I felt and what that also entails, like all together, I felt like I didn't want to be anywhere near him. And I also didn't want him to like see me like this. I felt like it was for him to see me like this also would maybe, I felt like in a lot of ways very insecure that it might impact him in a very negative way, just because of what I also encountered when I was younger. Just kind of brings back like old memories in a sense where, like, in past relationships, when something kind of hits the fan, people kind of just leave. So I felt like in that way where I just didn't want him to see me like this. But the one time we decided to be intimate, my daughter happened. So it was just like, one of these things, like, there were definitely times where, I would say the majority of the time when I was going through TSW, I was not very intimate with my husband, just because I just felt so disconnected with myself that I couldn't connect with him again. So, and it had nothing to do with him, of course. It was just me. And for me, I couldn't really talk to anybody about it other than like my sisters and my mom. And there were times where even like because of this, I felt like I also expressed this to Alex at the time, that maybe separation would have been like a better option, because that's how severe it was. And it was a very low point in our relationship, just because I would never think that we would have to separate because of this. It was maybe, if we were to ever separate, we'd do something else, like more drastic. But for me to feel like I've lost a part of myself, it seemed like the right decision to make. But, we talked through it, and he understood where I was coming from, but he also was pushing through that, this was something that I wasn't going to live with forever. And that he wanted to be very much a part of that, of this journey with me. So there was a long period of time where, again, intimacy was not existent, but I would say it really did strengthen our relationship in so many ways now that things have progressed. And it's been a very gradual thing. So, for us to go from being this very lovey-dovey, for such a long time, we've always been a very strong couple, to when I hit rock bottom, to kind of have to figure things out again, it was a lot to navigate through. So, and we're still navigating through it now. And I feel like, again, I feel like we've built a different foundation and a better bond. But it's again, there are some low points and there's some high points. And I feel like that's generally how it is with any kind of relationship as well. So yeah, so a lot of growing, a lot of growth.
Thank you for being so raw and vulnerable to share that stuff, because I know that must have not been an easy time in your relationship, and probably the hardest time that you could have even expected to happen, especially after you had kids. And I'm sure for all of us, and that's why I share that we do have such a bond, because like we have this trauma bond that we all understand, because it's impacted our relationships and our dating and marriage in so many ways. And I also used to have this fear even before I started dating, like what happens if my partner leaves me, or like something happens, because they get so scared of what I'm going through. And I remember my naturopath did say that, like, when he saw what I was going through, because he said that it took him 2 months to see what my normal face looked like while he was working with me. And he said that most men would have left or gotten scared and ran away. And so I see that, like, for all of you on our team, how supportive your partners are. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see how they stuck by you and never gave up on you, and kept fighting for you and helping you get through this as well. And it's just such a nice thing to see that you all had that support. I also want to take a quick turn and just share one last thing before we end off, because I want to shift it to a more positive note before we end, and just talking about what mindset or coping strategies have helped you maintain a healthy relationship.
I'll start. I think I shared a couple just like throughout these questions that we've had and discussions that we've had. Yeah, I think like one thing is, again, just don't be afraid to be vulnerable. That's probably my biggest share on this, is that I definitely had to let my guard down more than one time in order to just help, I think, maintain positivity throughout it all, and to help maintain relationships. So a lot of it, there's certain people that you'll probably feel comfortable with doing this, over others. So, not to say like choose wisely, but definitely think about the folks that like have showed up for you in the past. Maybe it's not related to your skin. And don't be afraid to like tell them and open up. I found that people are extremely supportive and do want to help. And sometimes that help does look like, oh, like you should see this doctor or you should try this cream. But if they're open enough, like you can explain sort of where your brain and your heart is headed. And once you do that, they might actually start seeking alternative help, right? They might be like, hey, I noticed that there's this one person on Instagram that talks about natural remedies or other things like that. So I even had a friend once like help make me like a custom cream. I was very scared to try it, but it was like, she ended up telling me what was in it. And I was like, that was so kind. Or like another person was like, hey, I have this like tea blend that's supposed to help with your skin. So yeah, it was really, really cool to like see just, I think, all of the things that people were like trying in order to help me. And I was like, damn, I have a really great community here, So it's really powerful. And I think Timothy and I both kind of shared how we were like, man, let's just wait until we get better and then we can kind of share our journey. But I think there were kind of tidbits throughout that where I did tell just a couple people in my life. And again, then they showed up in these ways. So I'll end on that positive note.
I love that, Katie. Those are really good tidbits that you've shared. And yeah, I appreciate you for sharing some of those strategies as well. It's helpful to hear. And how about you, Timothy?
Yeah, I would say one big thing for me, I remember I was listening actually to I think it was one of your videos on just like some things to remind yourself, Abby, when going through flare, thinking about your skin. And it was about not claiming it. Like, I'm not my flare, I'm Timothy. I have my personality, my experiences, and like I don't want to claim this flare as my identity, because I think getting stuck in that headspace where it's like, this is my life now, I'm not who I was before, and I just felt like I was digging myself into a deeper and deeper hole, and then just reminding myself that I'm still me, and I still, like, I'm not my flares, I'm not my flaky skin, my itchy skin. Like, I don't claim any of that. I'm me, and that really helped me. And then definitely what Katie was sharing, about being vulnerable and letting people help if their intentions are good. Some people don't have a good delivery, and I'm sure everybody going through this or any other kind of skin condition, whether it's acne, rosacea, whatever it is, we've heard advice that has not been delivered well, and it hurts. But those who do really intentionally want to help us, to not just instantly turn that down. I remember I did that to my mom a couple of times. I would just get annoyed by her bringing it up. Like, oh, I did some research and I was wondering if I could try getting you this, or maybe you should try doing this with your skin, wrapping it, or trying something new. And I would just get annoyed by the fact that she brought something up, and to try my best not to do that. Because some of the things she suggested really were helpful and made things more bearable when I was going through some tricky times. So yeah, I would say both those two things were really important for me.
Thank you, Timothy, for sharing. And I'll pass it to Steph for the last one.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I would say everything that Katie and Timothy is pretty spot on. Just accepting help. I think accepting help was a big one. Again, a lot of us feel like, we've heard it all at some point. We've actually probably have heard it all, to be quite honest. But accepting help especially from people that are close to you, it's a way of them showing their love and, that they really do care. And allowing them to be part of your journey is also very crucial in maintaining a very healthy relationship as well, just because it's not always going to be rainbows and sunshine, right? So I think seeing you at your worst, or just seeing anybody at the worst, and being able to help them through that, it really does, again, build up that foundation. So I think for that, again, accepting help. I think, like, for me, my mom, again, grown woman here, and she's seen me butt naked when I was going through TSW. And for me, that was like, what on earth is happening here? So, I couldn't put my clothes on. And for me, again, my mom, like, she made me feel so comfortable. She's like, I've seen it before. Like, you don't have to worry. I'm here for you, wherever it is that you need. Like, even if, you're here and you need me to help you put on your clothes, like, I'm here for you. And I feel like now that in hindsight, we look back at it, we laugh about it all the time. And again, being very vulnerable and being kind of raw about everything is also what's going to really help in maintaining any kind of healthy relationship, whether it's with friends, family, your partner, even with your kids. Again, like, I've shared these things with even my son, who's only 6 years old. And, he tells me sometimes, like, mommy, like, I love your skin, and, like, you're beautiful. And, like, these things, like, again, like, just being, explaining it. And even though it can be very tiresome at times, explaining it, and again, showing them how, what kind of journey you've been through can also just really help them open up their view on and things in general, whether it's eczema or anything in life. So yeah, I would just say communication and allowing people to be a part of your journey. So I think that's, like, a really big coping and mindset shift. And I would say also, just maybe not also putting a timeline. I think for mindset shifts, like, I felt like when I finally decided to stop putting a timeline on my healing journey, I also noticed, like, a huge shift as well. And that also really did help in just maintaining a healthy relationship with not just the people around me, but with myself. So yeah.
I appreciate you for sharing those tips. And actually, now that you mentioned family, I remember that while I was going through the hardest severe flares in my 20s, I didn't have any family around because they all lived in different countries or cities. But I was thankful that my that my husband's family was there and that they treated me like a daughter, and that they would vacuum my skin whenever I went to visit them on the weekends, and they would change the bed sheets, and just very grateful for just having that care. And I wasn't used to it. So I appreciate each one of you for sharing. And actually, Sophie in our program said, this has made me emotional to see what you've all gone through and how much I can relate to it. It makes me confident in this program, seeing that you've all been on a similar journey. Thank you for sharing. And I'm so glad that it today gave you a chance to see what our team has gone through as well, and to let you know that you're not alone. And once again, if any of you do want to book a complimentary breakthrough call with any of them, feel free to, and they'll be happy to share more about their experiences and how we've helped our clients too, because we know how tough it is, and we want to let you know that you're not alone on this journey, that there is hope, there's things that can be done, and we can share with you ways that we can support you and how we've helped many of our clients get better as well. And so thank you for everyone who's joined today. And Gary also says, thanks to everyone for all the input. It was nice to relate. Good luck moving forward. Tomorrow is a new day to start over. Big love to you all. And for everyone who's listening, feel free to either send me a DM on Instagram at Eczema Conquerors, and there you'll be able to connect with me. And I'd love to hear more about what you're going through, what your story is, and how we can support you. And so I appreciate everyone here for sharing today. And Katie, Timothy, Stephanie, it was just such a pleasure to have all of you on, and to share your journey. And I'm sure many people here can relate. And so for anyone who's interested in talking to any of them, you can always head to the link that I shared about, if any of you want to hear more about their experiences and how our program can help support you as well. So appreciate you all for listening, and I hope that all of you have a great day. Take care.